Our reading this morning is a poem by Steve Cowett called Notice. This evening, the sturdy Levi's I wore every day for over a year, and which seemed to the end in perfect condition, suddenly tore. How or why, I don't know, but there it was, a big rip at the crotch. A month ago, my friend Nick walked off a racquetball court, showered, got into his street clothes, and halfway home collapsed and died. Take heed, you who read this, and drop to your knees now and again to kiss the earth and be joyful. And make much of your time and be kindly to everyone, even to those who don't deserve it. For although you may not believe it will happen, you too will one day be gone. I, whose Levi's ripped at the crotch for no reason, assure you that such is the case. Pass it on. Not long ago, I read an obituary in the newspaper for an old baseball player. Not a superstar, but someone who'd been pretty well known back when I was a kid, a solid major leaguer, and frankly, someone who had a reputation for being a little bit of a grouch. This was a guy who didn't really hang out with his teammates in the clubhouse, who never really warmed up to the fans, never gave an autograph, and who never, ever talked to the media, except to grouse or complain. So despite being a decent ball player, the guy wasn't really very well liked. And what's more, he never really seemed to be enjoying himself. So folks were surprised when, after he retired from the majors, he stayed in the game as a kind of roving minor league coach, the kind of coaches you see around the Sharks games over at the high school. All summer long, he'd hang around the batting cages of minor league parks, teaching rookies how to swing a bat. Folks noticed that he seemed to be good with these youngsters and nurturing even. Fans began cautiously approaching him to ask him for his autograph, which he now seemed happy to give, and to pose for the occasional picture with kids. And for the first time in his career, he even started talking to the press. Late in his relationship with the game of baseball, he finally seemed to be enjoying himself. And in turn, people enjoyed him. And then a few years back, he died. And a veteran sports writer from the Globe, I believe, who'd known him over the whole arc of his career, wrote an obituary that reflected on this shift in his disposition over time, how he seemed to become friendlier and happier. And one line of the obituary caught my eye, and I wrote it down in my notebook because I thought I'd share it one day in a sermon. That's what we preachers do. We're always writing things down for our sermons. The newspaper man wrote of the old ball player, he'd finally learned to say hello to life before it was time to say goodbye. Saying hello before it's time to say goodbye. I think that line captured my attention because it expresses a deep desire in my heart, a desire for myself and for all of us, a fervent hope that we not wait until it's too late to really show up for our lives, to be present to them, fully present, to embrace our lives and ourselves, and if we can, to be happy. Because as the poet cautions, the end has a way of sneaking up on us. So let's not wait until it's too late to be happy, to be joyful. Let's say hello to life before it's time to say goodbye. And I guess there's some urgency I feel around this message because as a minister, I spend a lot of time with people at the end of their lives. I've accompanied those for whom the time to say goodbye has arrived, perhaps sooner than they thought. And some were left kind of kicking themselves, frankly, for not having allowed themselves to be happier sooner, for not fully appreciating and enjoying their lives. I think I've shared with some of you before the wisdom of the British hospice nurse who, after a long career working with dying folks, did us all a great service by sharing with us the regrets most commonly expressed by folks at the end of their lives, in hopes that we might not succumb to those same misgivings. She wrote them down in a little book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. The list probably wouldn't surprise you. It includes things like, I wish I hadn't worked so much. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. And then there was this one. I wish I'd let myself be happier. Notice how this last regret is phrased. I wish I'd let myself be happier. The nurse explains that a lot of people go through life believing that their happiness is dependent upon circumstances beyond their control, right? Circumstances that fate visits upon them, upon us. But at the end of life, she says, folks have this aha moment, this epiphany. As they look back, they can see that there wasn't actually a correlation between good or bad circumstances in their lives and their own happiness. They realized that their happiness had not always, but often been a choice, a decision. Making more money didn't necessarily make them more happy. Getting that job they wanted didn't make them more happy. Happiness was something that came from within. Sometimes in spite of their circumstances, they discovered that they could choose to be happy. And once they discovered this, their chief regret was that they hadn't done it more often. Hadn't let myself be happy. Does anything get in the way of you choosing to be happy? I've heard some stories all over the years of folks who tell stories about things that get in the way of them choosing to be happy. Do you imagine that some unforgiving God might disapprove of you being happy? Or that a stern parent, perhaps long departed, might be disappointed? Do you tell yourself it's wrong to be happy in a world with so much suffering and injustice? Or that it's unfair to be happy when someone you love dearly is suffering? Over the years, I've discovered that we sometimes attribute an almost religious significance to our unhappiness. It's almost as if our unhappiness were some kind of penance, right? And we're not even Catholics, we're Unitarians. We're not even supposed to believe in that. But these ideas are hard to kick, friends. Sometimes congregants will come to me and literally ask me if it's okay for them to be happy. Ethically, morally. They've come to me asking permission, or the permission of whatever higher power I represent, to be happy. And if it's permission they seek, then believe me, I'm eager to grant it. Over the years, I've come up with hundreds of ways to say simply, yes. it's okay for you to be happy. It's a blessing. Cherish it. And if you believe in God, believe this: God desires your flourishing and your happiness, not your misery. I wonder what this invitation, the invitation to say hello to life before it's time to say goodbye, I wonder what it might mean for each of us. Honestly, Sue, I heard some of it in your check-in this morning in Joys and Concerns. I was like, there's my sermon right there. It's great. We're always on the same page like that, Sue. For some of us, it might involve undoing these powerful stories we tell ourselves about why we can't be happy. But for others of us, it might simply be an invitation to say hello to parts of ourselves that feel neglected or dormant. A relationship, a hobby, a passion. Or to settle some unfinished business, something that needs to be forgiven, someone we need to reconcile with. It's never too early or too late to say hello to life, as long as we do it before it's time to say goodbye. Right? Now I want to close with maybe a fun story about the ways in which we either allow or don't allow ourselves to be happy. Some of you may remember Robert Fulghum, right? Back in the 1990s, he was a Unitarian minister who wrote the best-selling book, All I Ever Needed to Know. I Learned in Kindergarten, right? Well, for years, Robert Fulghum wanted to dance, but he wasn't any good at it. And he was always kind of afraid he'd make a fool of himself, so he never danced. And then one year he attended a village wedding on the Greek island of Crete. And after the ceremony, the entire wedding party danced this lovely kind of Greek folk dance, and it was a line dance, and the music was playing, and everyone was dancing and laughing and smiling. Because, you can't help but smile when you're dancing, right? And more than anything else in the world, Fulghum wanted to join in the dance, to participate in that collective joy. But instead, he told himself this story over and over again. He said, "Don't make a fool of yourself. Just watch." Well, a wise old lady who was dancing in the line, an older Greek woman, perhaps saw this look of regret on his face, and she stepped out of the dance line, and she came over to the wall where he sat and sat down beside the author, and she said to him, if you join the dancing, you might look foolish, but if you sit out the dance, you'll certainly be the fool. So why not dance? So Fulghum got up and danced, and by his own account, he hasn't stopped since. He and his wife took up ballroom and tango and salsa. In fact, some years back, Fulghum decided that the formal dining room in his home wasn't really getting much use anymore. He and his wife always ate in the eat-in kitchen anyways. So he turned the dining room into a dance floor. He did it all up with a CD player. This was back in the days of CD players, right? And some fancy speakers, and where the chandelier once hung, he put up a disco ball, all right? And now every morning when he wakes up, he dances to at least one song while the coffee is brewing, right? My goal now, he says, is to dance all the dances as long as I can, and then sit down contented some sweet night and pass on, because there weren't any more dances left for me to dance. Friends, let's dance all the dances, or as many of them as we can. Let's take a risk for our happiness. Let's give ourselves permission, whatever permission we need, to embrace our life fully and joyfully. What are we waiting for? Let's learn to say hello to life before it's time to say goodbye. Amen.